Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/Brian E. Denton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading and reflection is from Chapter 244. Chapter 244. Kutuzov's order to retreat through Moscow to the Ryazan road was issued at night on the 1st of September. The first troops started at once, and during the night they marched slowly and steadily without hurry. At daybreak, however, those nearing the town, at the Dorogomilov bridge, saw ahead of them masses of soldiers crowding and hurrying across the bridge, ascending on the opposite side and blocking the streets and alleys, while endless masses of troops were bearing down on them from behind, and an unreasoning hurry and alarm overcame them. They all rushed forward to the bridge, onto it, and to the fords and the boats. Kutuzov himself had driven round by the side streets to the other side of Moscow. By 10 o'clock in the morning of the 2nd of September, only the rear guard remained in the Dorogomilov suburb, where they had ample room. The main army was on the other side of Moscow, or beyond it. At that very time, at 10 in the morning of the 2nd of September, Napoleon was standing among his troops on the Poklony Hill, looking at the panorama spread out before him. From the 26th of August to the 2nd of September, that is, from the Battle of Borodino to the entry of the French into Moscow, during the whole of that agitating, memorable week, there had been the extraordinary autumn weather that always comes as a surprise, when the sun hangs low and gives more heat than in spring, when everything shines so brightly in the rare, clear atmosphere that the eyes smart, when the lungs are strengthened and refreshed by inhaling the aromatic autumn air, when even the nights are warm, and when in those dark, warm nights golden stars startle and delight us continuously by falling from the sky. At 10 in the morning of the 2nd of September, this weather still held. The brightness of the morning was magical. Moscow, seen from the Poklony Hill, lay spaciously spread out with her river, her gardens, and her churches, and she seemed to be living her usual life, her cupolas glittering like stars in the sunlight. The view of the strange city, with its peculiar architecture, such as he had never seen before, filled Napoleon with the rather envious and uneasy curiosity men feel when they see an alien form of life that has no knowledge of them. This city was evidently living with the full force of its own life. By the indefinite signs which, even at a distance, distinguish a living body from a dead one, Napoleon, from the Poklony Hill, perceived the throb of life in the town, and felt, as it were, the breathing of that great and beautiful body. Every Russian looking at Moscow feels her to be a mother. Every foreigner who sees her, even if ignorant of her significance as the mother city, must feel her feminine character, and Napoleon felt it. That Asiatic city of the innumerable churches, holy Moscow! Here it is then at last, that famous city. It was high time, said he. And dismounting, he ordered a plan of Moscow to be spread out before him, and he summoned D'Haudeville, the interpreter. A town captured by the enemy is like a maid who has lost her honor, thought he. He had said so to Chutkov at Smolensk. From that point of view, he gazed at the oriental beauty he had not seen before. It seemed strange to him that his long-felt wish, which had seemed unattainable, had at last been realized. In the clear morning light he gazed now at the city and now at the plan, considering its details, and the assurance of possessing it agitated and awed him. But could it be otherwise? He thought. Here is the capital, at my feet. Where is Alexander now, and what is he thinking? A strange, beautiful, and majestic city, and a strange and majestic moment. In what light must I appear to them? Thought he, thinking of his troops. Here she is, the reward for all those faint-hearted men, he reflected, glancing at those near him, and at the troops who were approaching and forming up. One word from me, one movement of my hand, and that ancient capital of the Tsars would perish. But my clemency is always ready to descend upon the vanquished. I must be magnanimous and truly great. But no, it can't be true that I am in Moscow, he suddenly thought. Yet here she is, lying at my feet, with her golden domes and crosses scintillating and twinkling in the sunshine. But I shall spare her. On the ancient monuments of barbarism and despotism I will inscribe great words of justice and mercy. It is just this which Alexander will feel most painfully. I know him. It seemed to Napoleon that the chief import of what was taking place lay in the personal struggle between himself and Alexander. From the height of the Kremlin, yes, there's the Kremlin, yes, I will give them just laws. I will teach them the meaning of true civilization. I will make generations of boyars remember their conqueror with love. I will tell the deputation that I did not and do not desire war, that I have waged war only against the false policy of their court, that I love and respect Alexander, and that in Moscow I will accept terms of peace worthy of myself and of my people. I do not wish to utilize the fortunes of war to humiliate an honored monarch. Boyars, I will say to them, I do not desire war. I desire the peace and welfare of all my subjects. However, I know their presence will inspire me, and I shall speak to them as I always do, clearly, impressively, and majestically. But can it be true that I am in Moscow? Yes, there she is. Let me bring the boyars, said he to his suite. A general with a brilliant suite galloped off at once to fetch the boyars. 2 hours passed. Napoleon had lunched and was again standing in the same place on the Poklani Hill awaiting the deputation. His speech to the boyars had already taken definite shape in his imagination. That speech was full of dignity and greatness, as Napoleon understood it. He was himself carried away by the tone of magnanimity he intended to adopt towards Moscow. In his imagination he appointed days for assemblies at the palace of the Tsars, at which Russian notables and his own would mingle. He mentally appointed a governor, one who would win the hearts of the people. Having learned that there were many charitable institutions in Moscow, he mentally decided that he would shower favors on them all. He thought that, as in Africa he had put on a burnous and sit in a mosque, so in Moscow he must be beneficent like the Tsars. And in order finally to touch the hearts of the Russians, and being like all Frenchmen, unable to imagine anything sentimental without a reference to ma chère, ma tendre, ma pauvre mère, he decided that he would place an inscription on all these establishments in large letters. This establishment is dedicated to my dear mother. Or no, it should be simply Maison de la Mère, he concluded. But am I really in Moscow? Yet, yes, here it lies before me. But why is the deputation from the city so long in appearing? He wondered. Meanwhile, an agitated consultation was being carried on in whispers among his generals and marshals at the rear of his suite. Those sent to fetch the deputation had returned with the news that Moscow was empty, that everyone had left it. The faces of those who were not conferring together were pale and perturbed. They were not alarmed by the fact that Moscow had been abandoned by its inhabitants, grave as that fact seemed, but by the question how to tell the emperor, without putting him in the terrible position of appearing ridiculous, that he had been awaiting the boyars so long in vain, that there were drunken mobs left in Moscow, but no one else. Some said that a deputation of some sort must be scraped together. Others disputed that opinion, and maintained that the emperor should first be carefully and skillfully prepared, and then told the truth. He will have to be told all the same, said some gentlemen of the suite. But, gentlemen, the position was the more awkward because the emperor, meditating upon his magnanimous plans, was pacing patiently up and down before the outspread map, occasionally glancing along the road to Moscow from under his lifted hand with a bright and proud smile. "But it's possible," declared the gentlemen of the suite, shrugging their shoulders, but not venturing to utter the implied word, le ridicule. At last the emperor, tired of futile expectation, his actor's instinct suggesting to him that the sublime moment, having been too long drawn out, was beginning to lose its sublimity, gave a sign with his hand. A single report of a signaling gun followed, and the troops, who were already spread out on different sides of Moscow, moved into the city through the Tver Kaluga and the Doromiglova gates. Faster and faster, vying with one another, they moved at the double, or at a trot, vanishing amid the clouds of dust they raised, and making the air ring with a deafening roar of mingling shouts. Drawn on by the movement of his troops, Napoleon rode with them as far as the Dorogomilov gate, but there again stopped, and dismounting from his horse, paced for a long time by the Kamer-Kolinsky rampart, awaiting the deputation. All right, that concludes my reading of chapter 244. I will now proceed to my reflection on the same. A Year of War and Peace, day 244. The Ryazan Road to Ruin by Revolution. Anyone who has ever attempted to organize a simple family reunion will get a good laugh out of today's chapter. It's tough enough to coordinate the schedules, diets, and desires of loved ones. Just imagine trying to impose your will on an entire nation composed of Rostovs, Bazoukovs, and Bolkonskis. Yet that is exactly what Napoleon has in mind today as he surveys Moscow from the Poklani Hill. Quote, "Here she is, the reward for all those faint-hearted men," Napoleon reflected, glancing at those near him and at the troops who were approaching and forming up. "One word from me, one movement of my hand, and that ancient capital of the Tsars would perish. But my clemency is always ready to descend upon the vanquished. I must be magnanimous and truly great. But no, it can't be true that I am in Moscow," he suddenly thought. Yet here she is, lying at my feet, with her golden domes and crosses scintillating and twinkling in the sunshine. But I shall spare her. On the ancient monuments of barbarism and despotism, I will inscribe great words of justice and mercy. It is just this which Alexander will most painfully feel. I know him. It seemed to Napoleon that the chief import of what was taking place lay in the personal struggle between himself and Alexander. From the height of the Kremlin, yes, there's the Kremlin, yes, I will give them just laws. I will teach them the meaning of true civilization. End quote. We've spoken before of Napoleon's hubris. We've also discussed the stabilizing forces of tradition in society. Today, these subjects are married. Today, Napoleon believes that with one movement of my hand, he can arrange the social and political relations of an entire society. He honestly believes that instant proclamations upon an untested, unstudied population will prove more robust than the system the Muscovites themselves have built up throughout centuries of tinkering, trial, and error. Who does this guy think he is? Donald Rumsfeld? Napoleon considers the subjects of his conquest to be like so many chess pieces. He need only arrange them in an advantageous position on the chessboard. But people are not chess pieces. People are primates, prone to the same compulsion towards group identity and lethal violence as their evolutionary forebears. That's probably one reason why revolutions are such brutal affairs. Does Napoleon really think his revolution will be so different when he rolls up with all his fancy French ways and starts ordering these Russians around? We'll see. Revolutionaries, take note. Daily meditation. The science of constructing a commonwealth, or renovating it, or reforming it, is, like every other experimental science, not to be taught a priori. Nor is it a short experience that can instruct us in that practical science, because the real effects of moral causes are not always immediate. But that which in the first instance is prejudicial may be excellent in its remoter operation, and its excellence may arise even from the ill effects it produces in the beginning. The reverse also happens. and very plausible schemes with very pleasing commencements have often shameful and lamentable conclusions. In states, there are often some obscure and almost latent causes, things which appear at first view of little moment, on which a very great part of its prosperity or adversity may most essentially depend. The science of government being therefore so practical in itself, and intended for such practical purposes, a matter which requires experience, and even more experience than any person can gain in his whole life, however sagacious and observing he may be, it is with infinite caution that any man ought to venture upon pulling down an edifice which has answered in any tolerable degree for ages the common purposes of society, or on building it up again without having models and patterns of reproved utility before his eyes. Edmund Burke, Reflections on the Revolution in France. All right, so that concludes my reading of and reflection on chapter 244 of War and Peace. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for listening. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook, A Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at patreon.com, or making a one-time donation to PayPal. Links to all that are down below in the show notes. Tomorrow, we're going to be reading and reflecting on chapter 244. I hope you'll join me. Until then, take care of yourselves and others.